Hey, this is Derek, and today I'll be showing you how to replace and upgrade the front brake calipers on your first generation Toyota Sequoia or Tundra, and I'll be using my 2002 Sequoia as a demonstration here. As always, chock the back wheels of the vehicle and then jack up the front from the cross member, and then be sure to place jack stands underneath the frame. And you'll see in just a minute here, I also like to place the tires under the vehicle as one additional precaution. Use a breaker bar to loosen the two caliper bolts in the rear, and you'll want to remove the bottom one completely and then loosen the top one, but leave it in temporarily until we move a little bit farther forward. Fasten a strap to the top of the shock assembly, and we'll be using this to hang the caliper on. Now remove the bracket behind the spindle that holds the brake line in place, as well as the wheel speed sensor. You don't really need to do this step, but I'm going to. Loosen these pins and then pull the pins out, and you'll do this that way you can pull the brake pads out. However, if you're replacing the caliper completely, you can just take this whole assembly off instead of pulling the brake pads out. Here you want to clean the rust off as best you can using a wire brush, and this will ensure that the brake rotor has a nice flat surface to sit against. You also want to clean the rust off as best you can from the caliper mounting point, and this will just make sure the caliper has a nice flat surface to sit against. And here's a size comparison of the 13WL casting next to the old 13WE casting. Now hold up the new caliper up against the dust shield and mark it out with a pen, and we'll use this as a guide when we pull the grinder out to cut the dust shield. I don't show it here, but make sure you take a file to the edges you just cut. Otherwise, they're going to be really sharp and you might cut yourself. And here I'm also applying a little bit of anti-seize to the caliper bolts, just as an extra precaution. And then I'll go ahead and apply a little bit of anti-seize as shown here, just because I had a really hard time getting the rotors off, and I want to make sure that they don't get fused and stuck again in the future. And now clean up as much rust as you can just to make sure that the rotor has a nice flat surface to sit against. Now torque the caliper bolts to 90 foot-pounds. Apply a thin layer of brake pad lubricant to the back, and you can pick this up at any auto shop. Make sure your brake pads also have the metal shims that you see on the back of the pad. And here, make sure that the squeal clip is going to be on the pad behind the rotor, and it's going to be oriented towards the top. These are Duralast Gold ceramic brake pads from AutoZone, and they only came with one rattle clip per side. So if you have a different set of brake pads than I have, you might have a different style of anti-rattle clip. Have plenty of rags handy because this part can be messy. It might also be wise to wear some gloves when you're doing this. Go ahead and remove the brake line from the old caliper and transfer it directly to the new caliper. The back of the brake line should be tightened down to 11 foot-pounds. I really don't have a good way of measuring the torque here, so I'm just doing it hand tight. And at this point, reattach the bracket on the back of the spindle that holds the wheel speed sensor, wire, as well as the brake line. I bought remanufactured brake calipers from Napa Auto Parts, and they required that I bring the core back. So if you want to get that money back, make sure you save the old caliper. And now go ahead and fasten those clips on the back of the pins, and that'll just make sure that your brake pads don't fall out while you're on the road. Now, I don't have a pump to bleed my brakes, so I just went and asked my neighbor to come help me.
Press and hold.
All he has to do is push on the brake pad while I bleed the brakes. It's a pretty easy process. If you'd like a more detailed explanation on how to bleed brakes, leave a comment down below, and if enough of you are interested, I'll go ahead and make a how-to video on doing that.
And press and hold.
Well, thanks for watching, and I hope this video helped give you some guidance if this is a project you're looking to do. It didn't take too long, just a couple of hours.
And we just rolled over 300,000 miles last weekend.
Well, stay tuned for more maintenance videos while I try to keep this 2002 Toyota Sequoia rolling past 400,000 miles.
That's it. Appreciate the help.